president of the Tewksbury Garden Club. And I want to ask how many other people are here from other garden clubs? I think Bill Rick is here. Okay, Bill Rick is here. And what garden club are you from? Oh, you're Bill Ricka too. Wonderful. Okay. All right. So, welcome to our other garden club members. Welcome to the Tewksbury Garden Club members, and welcome to all of you. And thank you for being here, for helping us with this program where we are able to use the funds that we get from everyone being here and supporting us so generously to be able to turn it back into our community. Because above all, we are a civic organization and we take everything that we make and we turn it back into our community and by way of taking care of various public town properties, working with some of the senior folks in our town, working with children in the schools. So it really does, everything that you're being so very kind and generous with us tonight does get turned back. If you are anyone who would love to join our garden club, we welcome anyone from any town, even Bill Ricka, but we don't want to steal from you guys, but you know. But please, seek us out. You can find us at tewksburygardenclub.com, and you can find some information there about who we are, what we do, and ways to join our club. We'd love to have you. But what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to turn the microphone over to Tammy. Tammy and Christine put together this entire program for you to come and enjoy tonight, and she is going to introduce our presenter for the evening.
I want to introduce our presenter tonight, Susan Singerman. She is from Lifleur over in Andover. She has her own shop, and we have not been there yet, but yep.
I'm going to come over here.
And normally we would introduce her and give a little more of a byline and all of that, but I was asked not to because she has a story to tell you. That I was very excited about the story. I went to her. If after tonight, go to her website. With what she tells you about tonight, you're going to be inspired to go to her website and see a lot more. It was truly, I loved it.
Thank you, Tammy.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Oh my gosh, thank you, Tammy. Thank you, Christine. Thank you, Susan. Can you guys hear me okay? I said I feel like Taylor Swift. That's it. If you can't hear me in the back, just raise your hand, and I will have these gentlemen help me. So about a month ago, I was in Paris for work, and I was lucky that at the end of my tour, I had a day off. And I got up that morning, and the sun was shining, and Paris was just looking extra beautiful. And I remember getting my croissant and my café au lait, and I went for a walk in my neighborhood up to the Luxembourg Gardens. Any of you have ever been there? It's gorgeous, yes. And I started further down, and I started walking down this path to the Medici fountain, which is absolutely gorgeous if you ever have a chance to go. And as I was walking, there was just rows and rows of dahlias. And I remember just stopping because I think our lives get so busy. And I think we just pass by beauty all the time. And this was one moment where I stopped and I said, wow, this is absolutely gorgeous. And it made me think of my childhood. And I said to myself, wow, when was the first time I fell in love with flowers? And I asked that question to you. When was the first time you fell in love with flowers? And maybe you were in your grandmother's garden and you would pick tulips or daisies like I did and bring them to my mom and thought they were gorgeous. Or maybe your father gave you a rose on your birthday. Whatever it was, I feel it's what started the seed in me and how my journey began with flowers. And I was so fortunate because I had a mom who was very creative, had a garden. She did not belong to a garden club, but I would have told her to join the Tewksbury Garden Club. But she put together these beautiful bouquets, and she would put them all over the house. And my dad worked for Nabisco Corporation, so he was in grocery stores all the time. And he'd come home and he'd say to my mother, Madonna, my mother's name was Madonna, believe it or not, yes. Madonna and Rogero. Nice Italian family. And he'd come home and he would say, your bouquets are so much better than what they have at the grocery store. Now remember, this was many years ago. And he said, you should bring them in. You should show them to the owner of the grocery store. And my mom thought, well, I'm not a floral designer. I just like putting flowers together. And I'm sure a lot of you feel the same way. You're like budding floral designers, but we all start somewhere. So she put together bouquets and they went into the grocery store and she presented them to the owner. And he said, these are wonderful. I'll take 200 because Mother's Day is 2 or 3 weeks away. And yes, my mother had the exact same look. She was like, what? And she was horrified because she was like, I don't have enough flowers in my garden, right? I mean, you guys have gardens, right? You can wipe out your whole garden, right? And so she asked me one Saturday morning, I was 14. She said, Sandra, I want you to come to the flower market. And I don't know about you guys, but I was like, what's a flower market? I'm thinking, I don't know where I'm going. So we drove all the way into Boston. And how many of you have been to the wholesale markets? Yeah, it's pretty wow, right? And I remember walking in with my mom and the doors swung open. And I was like, oh, where? Like, this is just magical. And it was, I feel the first time I kind of had an inkling that, wow, this is really, really cool. And then my journey started with my mom and we would put bouquets together. And I never thought like I was that good at it, but I kept at it. And my mom was such a good teacher and we would put these beautiful bouquets and we started doing all these grocery stores and then we started doing weddings and it just blossomed from there. But then I turned about 16, 17 in high school and thought, I really don't want to be making flowers anymore. I want to be out with my friends, right? So I secretly did like it, but just didn't want to do it on the weekends. And of course, I was a good daughter and helped my mom. And then fast forward, when I was 19, I had the opportunity to move to Europe. And a lot of you are like, why did you become like a French florist, right? How did the French part come into my story? And I was so fortunate because I was a figure skater and I had the opportunity to skate with Holiday on Ice. Have you guys heard like Stars on Ice? Do you know Katarina Witt? Okay, because my kids are like, who? I was like, she was a big deal way back when, right? She was the Olympic champion. So she was from Germany. So we were based in Paris. But pretty much every 2 weeks we would go off and travel and go to Switzerland, Germany. But our home base was in Paris. And our shows are at night. So a lot of time during the day, I didn't have a lot to do. There's only so many museums you can go to. And I was like, I'm just going to start ducking into French flower shops because I think I missed home a little bit. And I also, how many of you have been to Paris and seen these flower shops? Right, it's pretty amazing. And this was back in the 80s, the late 80s. And I don't know if you remember, but the flower shops US would have all the flowers right in the back in coolers, leather leaf, baby's breath, and like 12 red roses that were just kind of, right? And now I'm in Paris and the flowers are dripping out of the stores to entice you to go in. And once you got in, it was just something I've never seen before. It was like rows and rows and rows of flowers, but different kind of flowers and different kind of greenery. And I was mesmerized. And I would call my mother every Sunday and I would tell her all about these flower shops and all the things they were doing. And my mom kept saying, okay, Sandra, how's your skating going? Like, you're talking so much about flowers. And I was just mesmerized. And I finally I basically volunteered at this flower shop down the street from my apartment called Les Fleurs. And I said, I'll clean buckets, I will process flowers, I will be your sidekick. And it was pretty funny because my French was horrible and they didn't really speak English. So it was kind of Franglish. But I always say we spoke the language of flowers. And as much as that I didn't understand a lot what they were saying, but I saw the way they created. It inspired me. And I would tell my mom all about it. And I think I started, like I said, talking more and more about it. And I think I wanted my mom and I to open a French flower shop together. And she thought I was crazy because she's like, no one's going to be able to understand this concept. And I said, I know, but if we love it, I think we can convince other people to love it too. And I thought our passion. So I started getting a little homesick. My mom had breast cancer, and I thought it was my time to come home. And we started the framework of opening this French flower shop. And I remember saying, we have to call it Les Fleurs. We have to. Didn't think of copyright back then, right? I was just like, there was no websites, there was no Instagram. I was like, we're going to call it Les Fleurs. And she was like, okay, so no one's going to be able to spell it or say it and understand the concept, but you are so enthusiastic. Sure, let's do it. So we found a little side street in Andover. It's now I'm on to my third location. So my first location was teeny. It was on a side street, had kind of like a cobblestone walkway, and I thought, oh, we're in Paris. We're not. But my mom and I opened this flower shop in January, and I was 23, and my mom died a month later. And it was pretty hard. And I know we've all had hardships in our lives, and you wonder sometimes, like, how am I going to get through this? And I had no business experience, just was my mom's kind of sidekick, as I said. But a friend of mine said, sometimes, Sandra, you have to think of three things when life throws you a curveball: God, grit, and grace. And the God part is, okay, God, this has been presented to me. And the grit is to get up every day, even when you don't want to. Because sometimes we do have to do hard things. And we have to do things that don't necessarily what I wanted to do. I wanted to mourn, I wanted to cry, but I had a shop to run. And the third one was grace, that some days are going to be better than others. And you have to give yourself some grace. So these three mantras or principles I've really kept in my heart this whole journey, these whole 34 years. And it serves me so well, and I hope this message helps you. Because when I had to go promote the business after my mom died, I didn't have the skills. I didn't know what I was doing. And I kept saying to myself, like, how am I going to do this? Like I said, there's no Facebook, there was no websites. We did newsletters. Remember the newsletters, like with a stamp? And I remember talking to a photographer friend, and he said, you should do one of those bridal shows. And I was like, bridal shows? Like, I didn't even know what a bridal show was. And he's like, well, you set up a little booth, if you will, and you do your flowers and you pass out cards. And I had no business cards. I was like, but I know how to make bouquets. So that's what I did. And I called the company that was promoting the bridal show in Boston at the Park Plaza Hotel, by the way. It was lovely. And I called the guy and I said, hi, I would like to, submit my application. He said, no, we're sold out. There's no spots. And I said, okay, if there is, here's my phone number. Please give me a call. So about 3 weeks later, I got a call and he said, someone backed out. Would you want the spot? And I was like, yes, sure. Terrified. But I said, no, I know how to make bouquets. I guess I have to get business cards printed with this name no one's going to be able to pronounce or spell, but I'm going to do it. And I showed up, and I had that grit, and I showed up. And I was so excited. I think I was talking to every lovely bride that came in and showing them all the things I did. And I remember I came home and I booked 38 weddings. And I was like, oh my goodness, I think they felt bad for me. I don't know. But then I was like, oh gosh, I have to create. I have to, start doing weddings. So I called my friends. My dad came and helped. I mean, everybody really showed up for me and pitched in, which was lovely. But I remember one day crying because I'm trying to do this huge wedding and none of my friends knew how to design. And they were like, well, we'll try to help. I'm like, but you don't know how to design. And, but you get over those moments and you look back and you say, I can do hard things. And I kept remembering my time with these flower geniuses in Paris and how they taught me the different techniques. And what I loved about it too is the selection and the collection and the things they put together. Because in France, I've noticed that people go to the flower shops just like they're picking up their bread for the day. And they go to the patisserie, the boulangerie, and the fleuriste. And they go in, and it's not for an occasion. Here in the US, what do we buy flowers for? Birthdays, weddings, funerals, right? It's kind of sad. I mean, I think now you can pick something up at Trader Joe's, right? But years and years ago, it really wasn't the case. It was pretty much if you were a flower shop, you were waiting for those orders to come in saying it was a celebration. So it was really interesting to me to see how this concept in France worked. And to this day, it's still the same. And I also loved about it is a lot of folks would come in for a hand-tied bouquet. They don't do the mass-produced containers you see. How many of you guys have closets full of those containers I'm talking about? Everyone's nodding. Yes. As do I. And what I really loved about their style is that they would ask the client, like, Madame, where is it going? What's the location? Is it going on a table? Is it going on a foyer? Because that makes a difference, right? And they also sometimes would pass down these containers that their grandmothers had or their mothers, and they would bring them in to be filled, which I thought was so different than we do here as well. And it's interesting, at Les Fleurs, we actually still go to France and fill containers because, of course, that's what the French flower shops did. And I was like, I can't put it in some ugly basket. I got to go to France. So now I do these tours where I take women and men, and we go around to all the brocantes, all the antique fairs, and we fill the container, and we put a lot of it in our shop. But a lot of the women that come on my tours are just so thrilled they don't have to stuff it in their suitcase. So it's really great. So these type of containers, so I'm going to start walking up to the stage. Sorry. And I wanted to just show you the container I brought today with me, because I want you to think outside the box like these French flower shops owners did. So this is just a straight old terracotta pot that had a hole in the bottom that we plugged. So as one does, I went to Home Depot and I went to the plumbing supply section and I asked him, so what can I do to not have this drain through? So they have those caulking things, the silicone, so you can just get something there. And then what I did is I coated it with a silicone spray. So think outside the box, and you can pretty much use anything. And then what I also wanted to show you is that any of you used a pin frog, a flower frog? Okay, because a lot of folks will ask me if we use Oasis. You know that foamy stuff? How many of you use it? You've used it, right? We all have. I mean, I would be lying to say I never used it for weddings or anything. But what we try to do is we try not to use it for a couple reasons, is that the Oasis brings down the shelf life of your flowers almost by half. And it's also not biodegradable. There is some new products coming on the market that you can try, which we have tried before. The verdict's still out for me, but I love to do a really simple flower frog, but if you don't have one, you can use chicken wire. Have you guys seen chicken wire before? Now, during COVID, I think everybody was putting up chicken coops or whatever because we could not get chicken wire. And we had to get uncoated chicken wire, so all our water turned rust. So get the coated kind, okay? Because it will make a difference. You don't want your water to be brown. So I love using this in my designs because what happens is your stems go through, right? And if you make a ball shape, it will go through on the top and then click at the bottom. Have any of you just put a thing of chicken wire and everything still falls out? So you want to make sure you do it in like a circular, almost like a spear, and then I kind of crunch the sides. And then I tuck it into my vessel and it will fit really snugly. You'd be surprised. You can really manipulate it. And then you fill your container with water And this grid system will hold your flowers in place into the pin frog too. So I get a lot of questions. People say to me, so does every stem have to be in the pin frog? No. The main ones, the bigger stems, say like your hydrangea stems, absolutely should be in. But some of your little smaller stems, as long as it locks in through the chicken wire, you are safe, okay? So do you know those cooking shows, like Good Morning America? And they put the cookies in and then they're like, it's done? Okay. So, ta-da! So I didn't think you guys wanted to watch me green for 20 minutes. So, can you see I use a footed bowl, which I love using footed pedestal. It just gives it a little bit of a rise to your container. And what I did is, how many were out in the garden this morning with the snow? I was like, really, New England already? I don't know. I miss my garden. I'm a big gardener lady, so hats off to all of you who have beautiful gardens. And I went foraging a little bit and got some little pear, and I have some grevillea here. There wasn't much. My oat grass, it's a little on the dry side, but I still thought it was so charming. And I even got some little curly grapevine. So be creative. And I design like a garden. So a lot of times when designers come to work for me, everything's like triangles and threes, and I look more like a garden. So if you look in a garden, do you see movement, like height? And you see everything, so your delphiniums and then your peonies. So there's three things I like to keep in mind when you're designing. One is the type of location it's going. So is it going on a kitchen table? You want people to see over the container, so you have to be mindful. And the second thing is, what different shapes are you going to use? Remember the 80s when everyone used to do those ball arrangements at the weddings and everything was like we called it pave? So you want to make sure you're using linear and also things that are circular, and then you want floating things. And floating is more like your ranunculus. See how it has a bend? And they kind of float and they bounce in the arrangement. So you want to think about that. And the other thing you want to think about is your color theory. So the next time you're at Trader Joe's or wherever you're getting your flowers, have those in your head. There's so many folks that I swear just go to a grocery store and they just grab everything. And then you get it home and you're like, oh my goodness, like what am I doing with all this, right? So go with a plan. Figure out your container. Figure out sort of your color theory. And also, where is it going, right? And then you also want to get different shapes and textures. Even these are really cool, which is in the privet family. These are called magic pearls. Have you seen these? So I'll try to point out. I was really sad because I really wanted to bring a lot of stuff from my garden, but everything was just kind of not good. So what I'd like to do first is get my color theory together, get my textures, get my container, but then I start building out my greenery, and I say my greenery is my architecture, that I want to make sure it builds the foundation of my flowers. Can you see some like negative space here and here? So I'm going to start with some of my linears, which is really wonderful. These are gorgeous snapdragons. The other thing I always want to remind people too is when you're designing, I'm going to turn my back to you almost, but can you see everything's either right facing or left facing? So look at your flower before you put it in. Even look at your greenery before you're in. Is it right facing or left facing? If it's right facing, then it should go into the container. Okay. And you can see me jiggling it in. I always use these two fingers. A lot of times I see designers, they're like holding on for dear life. So 2 fingers. And the other thing I like you to just think about when you're putting your flowers in is the tapping method. So I want you to tap it on your shoulder and I want you to go in that direction. Okay? There's too many folks that do this. So in your head, just go, okay, Sandra wants me to go and put it in because it lends it to that more softer, okay? So tap it on your shoulder and go in, okay? So you can see how I'm building out just my structure. How many of you have hydrangeas in your yard? Okay. how many of you have cut hydrangeas and then you get them in and they're like, blue? Right. So we have a few tricks, and maybe you've heard of some of these. What we like to do is a couple things. In my garden, the first thing I do is cut early in the morning. So what time? I'd say 6:30. When it starts getting too warm, the hydrangeas get tapped. So I always have a bucket of room temperature water next to me. Okay, once I cut my hydrangea, it goes into water. I do slice it up the middle. Has any of you done that? Okay. And the other thing you want to do is, like I said, have it close to water. And then the other thing I do is, we have alum, you know alum from the spice rack? Because what hydrangeas happens to them is when you cut them, they think they've been injured. So what do? They start closing their stem. In the alum, which is in the spice section, I guess it's for canning. Is it for canning? Anybody? No, canning. Right. So again, I cut it on the side, I dip it in the powder, and then I put it in the water. And I know you're going to ask me, well, I've done that, it doesn't work. So, and sometimes, things happen. So the other thing we do is, if at the flower shop we have a big wedding and we need all our hydrangeas to behave, we dunk them. We get a little tub of water and we submerge the hydrangea head down, because they drink from their petals. So if all those tricks don't work, I don't know, they just don't like you that day, I guess. So as you can see, I'm building out the larger flowers first. We're going to put these in. If you guys have any questions while I'm designing, you can raise your hand and I will try to answer them, because sometimes afterwards you're like, oh, I forgot to ask her this, or I forgot to ask. So feel free to ask me questions. I'm going to put in a little smoke bush, which I love. So we're going to put in some of this. How many of you have, oh yes, go ahead.
How do you decide where to cut it? Like how to get the heights correct?
Yeah, so when my designers start to come work for me, I tell them, maybe I'll even come around the front to show you this. Oh, no stairs there, hold on. I'm a good jumper, but, so, sorry. Okay, so the question was, how do I know what length to cut my stems? So what you can do is you can go up to your container, and if you want to cut it kind of on the shorter side, can you see right here? Can you see? So that will give me an indication to get it in, to have it on the lower side. If you want taller, then so that's usually a good rule of thumb. But you will get consistent when knowing the height. In length, you should cut things. So I don't know if that's helpful. So how many of you love peonies? So these are from Holland. I'm sorry, they're not from my garden, but I kind of have a mad obsession with peonies and garden roses too. Anybody else share this obsession? I actually presented at the Chelsea Flower Show. How many of you have been to the Chelsea Flower Show? Ladies, gentlemen, you have to go. Okay, so I got asked to present my floral book, which I was so honored. I kept saying, are you sure you want me? I'm not British. I'm an average gardener, and I wrote a book about French floral design. They were like, no, we love that. And I was like, okay. They were lovely. But when you walk into the Chelsea Flower Show, David Austin roses, oh my goodness. The hugest display I've ever seen of roses, colors that I've never seen, all named after ladies, like that, but absolutely breathtaking. And what I also loved about the Chelsea Flower Show is all of London flowers in front of their hotels, restaurants, stores, and they have like almost I wouldn't say it's a competition, but it's kind of like who gets the best award. So it's spectacular. If you have a chance to go, I took my husband who likes flowers, and he was like, this is amazing. It was pretty gorgeous. So back to peonies. Okay, so slight obsession with peonies. And I decided that I wanted to start growing all different types of peonies for our shop. So there is a company called Adelman Peony Farm. Have anybody heard of it? They're in Oregon. Their peonies are spectacular. And because peonies are divas, you have to plant them and ignore them for 3 years. You put them in, you're like, we know, you're fussy. You ignore them. And you tell them, I'll see you in 3 years when you grow up. It's like having teenagers. I have 5 boys, so I know. So these peonies are absolutely gorgeous. And when they do grow up, they're stunning and they're massive. And they're called, there's a variety I love the most. It's called etched salmon. Have you heard of it? Beautiful. And like I said, I have a slight obsession. So I had all my peony plants kind of blooming at the same time. And I was like, ah. And it would be great if I had like a big wedding that weekend, but sometimes I don't. So I was like, oh gosh, okay. So what I do, has you ever heard of dry cutting peonies? Dry cutting? Anybody? Okay. So you are going to pick your peonies in the marshmallow stage. Does anyone know what that means? Like it's squishy to your hand. This is a little on the harder side. So if they're squishy, like a marshmallow, it's time to cut. And what I would do is I would strip off all the greenery, just like I did here, and I would do 10 stem bunches. So I would get craft paper or newspaper, and I would roll them up, snug as a bug, like a baby. And they would just be their noses sticking out. And I would bring them to my flower shop, and I would not put them in water, and I would dry cut them and put them on all my shelves. I learned this from the Dutch. They do it well. How they ship all their flowers. And every week I would take out what we needed, and I had peonies till July. So it was fantastic. So all our weddings, we had tons of peonies, and they were so much superior than what we get at, the wholesale market. So if you're interested, try it. What do you have to lose, right? Hold on. Okay, so once we would take them out of the cooler, we would put them in room temperature water, sometimes maybe on the warmer side, in a couple hours. Yeah, we would put them in their solution and they would just start to open. Yeah, it was amazing. And now I do it every single year. So this is lovely hellebore, another little fussy flower, but we love her. We love her. Yes.
Hi, can I just ask you a question? All these little hints you're giving us, are they in your book?
Yes, some of them are in my book. Yes. You know what else is in my book, which is interesting? I'll try not to jump around. I get so excited. A lot of folks get that little packet, the flower food. You've heard of that. How many of you throw them away? Yeah, you're like, well, I don't know what to do with this. What is this? It's actually quite important. You should keep it and try to use it. I know. Everyone's like, oh gosh, sorry. Not to worry. In my book, I do give you a homemade recipe. Any of you know what the 3 components of in those packets? Anybody? Sugar, yes, because they're like little kids. They like their sugar. It gets them to drink the water, the blooms. What's the second thing? What? Bleach. I heard bleach. Yes, bleach, because that's why we strip off all the greens, because it starts mildew and the water gets all yucky. So yes, that's really important too. Sorry. And what's the third thing? Anybody? I think pH level. So that when you hear aspirin or a penny, it's the pH level of what the flowers like to have. Okay? Yes?
Do you use that whole packet when you have a bouquet?
Yeah. In like a traditional vase. Yeah, whole packet. Yeah. So I've got my hellebore in and I've dotted. And did you notice how I put the green hydrangea with the green hellebore? So I call that color blocking. And what color blocking means is putting the same color or tones together, and it gives that appearance of nature like a garden. Because if you put orange, burgundy, and it's like kind of like hodgepodgey, you want to make sure it has a cohesiveness. And interesting enough, which I learned this from a friend in England, is that you, in a garden, in how you study art is from left to right, like you read. Is that interesting? So when you go in the garden, you always look to the left and go to the right. Think about it next time. How you read, how you look at nature is always left to right. So when I'm doing my arrangements, I try to do left to right because it gives that feeling of a garden. I'm going to turn this around in 3 seconds. So I'll start with the left. And this is my kale, which I think is so darling this time of year, right? We have to do this. So you're going to see me, and I'm going to show you how can you see? Can you see? Yeah. If you want to, you can always come up. So I kind of nuzzle them together because I think they like to be friends. So, and then trailing over here from left to right. And I'm dotting in. When you're designing, another thing I think is really important, I teach my designers this, think of a bumblebee flying through your arrangement. Because if you start packing it so much, you're just going to get that kind of moundy and it's going to look a little wonky. So just have that movement, just like a garden. These are gorgeous. These are called blueberry roses. If anybody ever, just so pretty, right? So I'm going to keep it in that purpley family, just because I think it kind of has, and you're going to notice too, I like doing things at varying lengths. I wish sometimes they have over-screen cameras that you, mirrors. So I apologize that you have to see the back of this for a few minutes. But these are just gorgeous. And again, I'm moving left to right. Can you see? Yeah, yeah. And these are called quicksand roses. And when these come in, roses tend to have, can you see, it's kind of like this, the outer level of the rose. And people are like, oh, that rose is bad. It's not. It's basically the guard petal, it's called. So you want to take that off. And if you take the guard petal off, it activates the rose to open. So when we have weddings, we're like, okay, you stay out, you go in, we take the guard petal off. So there's a lot of different techniques to get your roses, because for weddings, we want the roses to be gorgeous and open. The other thing you can do with the roses is called reflecting, and you can take it, the petal, and you can watch me just kind of turn. And look how it just opens the rose, and it almost becomes a little bit like a garden rose. Oh, sorry. Can you see? Yeah. So pretty, and it's just so, oh, sorry. You're gonna be like, all right. But I just want to show you this. Look at how stunning. Okay, so we're gonna dot some more of these in there because they're just too gorgeous. So some of them I did ahead of time. So when we do wedding work, it's so funny. We're constantly like making sure the roses and this is going on. It truly is like a little bit of a dance. But these are quite gorgeous, so we have to put some of these in. Another thing we do, which, what? Did someone have a question? Another thing we do is, I don't know, I feel carnations get a bad rap. These are Italian. But I'll tell you a little trick. When we're doing weddings, like big weddings, and you know how a lot of the brides love those flower clouds, you know, over the dance floor, or when you walk in, the whole ceiling is all decorated with flowers, and we never want to disappoint our brides, right? So we have a little trick. And my college students are like, oh no, she got 300 carnations. So what we do is we buy, say it's a wedding that's white, we buy tons of white carnations, and we take out the center of each little carnation, and it changes the look. Almost, any of you know what a lisianthus is? It almost starts to look like a lisianthus. And it's so interesting if you do it with a white one, It has this like really frilly, and then the brides walk in, they're like, oh my God. It's our little secret, because you always want to come in under budget, on budget, and they just love it. They say, oh my God, look how abundant it is. So next time you're having a party or a wedding, you can do that little trick. And I know I did get asked one time, does that shorten the life of the carnation? It does not. No, it does not. It's totally fine. So we're gonna put a few of these in, which I think are so charming. Like, look how sweet they are. Can you see? Right? I mean, they get a bad rap, I think, right? So we're gonna, don't want to keep you here all night, because I know everyone's probably, so I should probably talk about the book a little bit, right? So I got a really cool story. Well, it wasn't cool at the time, but the cover, can you show the cover? This was not the original cover. No, it was not. So my publisher, who's in New York, chose, which is in the book, if you buy it, I will show you what the original cover was supposed to be. And they picked it. I had no say in it, and they picked it. And do you know when you get like that feeling in your heart and you're a little bit like, ooh, and it was a nice picture. Of course I did it, but it wasn't the picture that in my head, that I thought it was going to be. And I just didn't know what to do. And I didn't know if I should say something, but I was completely terrified. And my husband's like, you got to say something. Because when you're out promoting your book and you're talking about it, aren't you going to want to look at your book and be so proud of it? He goes, and if you look at that, you're going to think in your head like, oh, I could have done better. So I said, oh, I don't want to call them again. So I called them and I said, I have a favor to ask. Would you mind if I reshot the cover? And they said, absolutely not. We're going to print. No. And I said, please, let me explain why. And I said, first of all, I really wanted this to be shot in France, because my whole story is based on that. And the one you chose was was shot here in the States. It was a tight shot. And they said, okay. And I said, the second is that I know I can do better. I know I can do something better. They said, well, I'll tell you what, you have 1 week to shoot, and the only condition is you put it in the same container. We like that container. Show her the container. Can you show them this, Tammy? Show her the container. It's called the Jardiniere. Have you heard of these? So I said to my husband, can you lift it? So I said to my husband, and my husband's like, Sandra, get on the plane with your little container and get your little butt back to France. So of course, he's like, they're giving you another shot. Go, you gotta go. And I was like, all right. So I get on the plane with my little jardiniere, which I was too terrified to put it under. So I carried it in a carry-on, and it's cast iron. And I'm lugging. So I get to Paris, and any of you heard of Rungis, the famous flower market? It's one of the largest in Europe. And it took me a year to get credentials to be a professional. And I was so excited because I was like, okay, I'm legit. And I planned it all out. I had the photographer meet me there. We're going to get the flowers. I had a place where we're going to shoot it. And we got up, we took the Uber, we ran over, and we walked into Rungis, and it was closed. I was like, oh my goodness, there's no flowers. I don't know if it was a bank holiday, I don't know what. And do you think I should have Googled it? Sure. And it's, it's private, it's for wholesalers only. So I was like, oh my goodness, my one shot, I have like now 2 days to produce a bouquet. And in the corner of my eye, there was this gentleman bringing in boxes. And I ran over as fast as I could in the worst French of my life and just said, like, what do you have? Anything. And he says, Madame, I only have roses. And I said, I'll take them. And the rest of my book was done with plants because the plant department was still open. Yes. So my phone was completely blowing up. My staff's calling me. My husband's texting me. Did you get it? And I said, you know what? I don't know, but this is a great story. And I said, hopefully, they will like it. But at that point, I knew I gave it 100%. And I knew if they liked it, great. But if they didn't, oh well, I tried. So they did like it. So when you look at my cover, I hope you have that cute little story. Okay, so we're just finalizing and kind of seeing where texture is needed. This is something called Veronica, which again, it's not like a really fancy flower, but to see how it has whimsical and it has a little bend to it, anything you can do and use in your bouquets that will give you a little, And again, I'm trying to put it in those negative spaces like you see in a garden, and remember the bumblebee effect. So, this is also something really pretty. This is called Astrantia, and what I love about this is I actually cut it on the shorter side, and I love tucking it in to little crevices to add a little color. So I'm going to kind of show you, because remember, if you're at a dinner party, your folks are all sitting, so sometimes when you're doing your florals, I want you to kind of duck down and tuck little things in the bottom, and your guests will be like, look how clever, look how cute. So you can think of all these like little touches. So we're going to put a few of these, and I like them bouncing around. Can you see how I'm adding layers and layers and layers? I know you're probably like, you make it look so easy. Trust me, I have days where my bouquets are not so lovely, but that's okay. You get up the next day and you do it again. So during COVID, my husband's a doctor, and I would go to work because I don't know about the rest of you, like I think we're all home making bread or whatever. So I used to go to the flower shop and I would get flowers from my garden and I would create anything, and I would do live little Instagram stories. I would do live, and I would make these bouquets, and I would teach like I'm teaching now. And my husband being a doctor, I was so nervous, and we all the unknown, and I would give him my flower arrangements to bring into the nurses. And it always brought such a smile to my face when he came home and just said, these flowers made someone so happy. The nurses were just, and it's funny, you think just a little flower arrangement. So maybe the next time, you have a friend in need, maybe you just take some flowers. Just make something beautiful for her. And honestly, flowers are so forgiving and so beautiful that you don't need much, right? And also during COVID, I think we all kind of looked at life about like life's too short, right? And taking the time to do the things that are important in dreams that you might have had. And one of my dreams, when I was 21 and retired from figure skating and was leaving Paris, hopefully for not the last time, I remember looking over my shoulder on my way to the airport, 21, saying, oh my God, this can't be the last time I live in Paris. I just fell in love. I loved it so much. And I think I talked about it for 25, 30 years. My husband was like, okay. And it was COVID, and we had one night we were just sitting talking, and we are becoming empty nesters. Our last one was in college, and we were talking about like what our next plan is, what we're going to do. And a lot of our friends were starting to think about living in the city in Boston. And I said an off the cuff remark, well, if we're going to move to Boston, honestly, I'd rather move to Paris. And he said, yeah, I would too. And I was like, oh. I said, don't kid, no joking. He goes, no. He's like, honestly, I think it would be fun. And I said, really? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, I have that like real estate guy I know. And he was like, of course you do, honey. And I said, so he goes, yeah. He goes, let's go over for the weekend to look at apartments. And I was like, okay. I was all excited. So we set up a few visits, and it was really funny. So our real estate agent said, Sandra, you know Paris pretty well. What are you thinking? Like, where do you want to live? I said, well, I really, really, really want to be in the 6th, the left bank. And have you been in the left bank? And I said, and there's this one street I love. And he was like, wait a minute, one street? in one arrondissement. I was like, well, yeah, but I go, but it, that area. So, but we did have some, perimeters. We had, budget. The second thing was I didn't want to be in a closet with no windows. And I said, and the third thing is the location. So he brought us to a bunch of we got there on Friday. We saw 6 apartments on Friday. We were going to see 2 on Saturday because not too many people work on Saturday. And Sunday, nothing. We were just going to enjoy the day and fly home on Monday. So the first day was really our day. And we saw 6 apartments that were not great. They were either in the wrong area or needed a lot of work. And that's another thing. We live here in the States. We were going to only live here part-time. So I didn't really want a big construction job that I had to manage from the US. So we went and saw those apartments. And I will be honest, I came home. I was a little bummed. And I'm in the hotel. And I'm like, oh, well, it's okay. Well, maybe another time. It's not meant to be. And the next morning, my husband nudges me, completely jet lagged. And he's like, what about this apartment? And I said, he goes, it's in that area you like. And I said, where did you find that? He goes, I don't know, I just found it online. Because in France, they don't have MLS listings. Every agency has their own listing of apartments or buildings or things they're selling. It's funny, you think they'd all share that information and have it on one, but they just don't. So I said, oh my goodness. And he goes, well, let's call our realtor. And we did. And we said, hey, did you hear about this? He goes, wow, that just went on the market on Friday, the day before. And I said, can we go see it? And he goes, no, I'm not going to get anybody to show this on a Saturday. I said, can you try? We're only here till Monday. He said, I will try. He calls us right back and he says, you're not going to believe this, but the real estate agent is willing to show it to you right now because she's got to go babysit her French grandchildren. And I said, I love her already. So we jump in another Uber, we're throwing on clothes, we're completely jet lagged, and we drive up, and I have goosebumps. It was the street. And my husband's like, oh my God, it's your street. I was like, it's my street, it's my street. So of course, I didn't want to get my hopes up. We walk into the apartment, and it's 8 big balcony windows, light flooding in, and I'm like, oh, and he's like, poker face. As you can tell, you kind of know my style right now. Not very good at hiding my emotions. So I'm literally like, oh my God. And the real estate agent said, oh, I have 5 people coming to see it on Monday morning. And in France, if you give asking price, they must take it off the market. So my husband goes, we'll take it. And I'm like, what? Can we go in the bathroom and discuss this, or the closet? And he looked at me and he goes, honey. And I said, oh my God. So we leave. We go downstairs and we have to go back to the office a couple hours later. It's now like 10 o'clock in the morning. And he says, let's go get a drink. I said, yeah, I need a drink. And of course, we're in Paris and everything's serving drinks all day long. So we are sitting in this cafe and we're having a drink. I think I got champagne. And I looked at him and I said, what did we just do? We know nothing about this. And he looked at me and he goes, we are just coming out of COVID. Look at the way of the world. Honey, you sometimes have to just go. You've got to live your dream. You've been talking about it. And I think we get paralyzed in our fear of like not doing and fulfilling our dreams and doing something that maybe may change your life. And I know it's scary, and trust me, I gave myself 1,000 excuses of why not to do it. But we did do it. We jumped. But they say jump in the deep end, hold your nose and jump in the deep end. I was like, oh, we did all right. And it's been nothing but absolutely wonderful. We go all the time. I host tours now with ladies, mostly ladies, but men too, that come, and we go and do floral design. My friend owns the oldest flower shop in Paris called La Rossoir, the watering can. And she's got a beautiful story where she's American but fell in love with a French boy and didn't know, she didn't speak French and she didn't know any job to do because she was like me, the daughter of a floral designer. Is that a sweet story? And she and I talk about it and the beauty and the language of flowers and how we all learned it in taking risks in life. So that morning that I got up a month ago and walked to the Luxembourg Gardens and strolled and saw all the dahlias, I stopped and said, wow, almost like it came full circle, and that I really remembered the first time I fell in love with flowers. And I hope this presentation brings you back to that memory as well. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So I think we're raffling this, but if you have any other questions for me, even about France, I'd be happy to answer, or my business, or anything. You guys are so sweet.
Does anyone have any questions before we break?
Don't be shy.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Yes, we
You're
will
welcome.
be raffling that off.
Okay, great.